The case and trial of Harry K. Thaw stands as one of the most sensational events in early 20th century American legal and social history. It captured national attention not only for its lurid details, but also for its reflection of the interplay between wealth, celebrity, and justice in the Gilded Age. This extraordinary case was more than just a courtroom drama. It was a societal spectacle that unveiled the stark contrasts between opulence and depravity, innocence and corruption, and justice and privilege. At its heart lay three central figures, whose lives intersected in a tragic and scandalous narrative. Harry K. Thaw, the erratic millionaire heir; Evelyn Nesbit, the celebrated beauty with a troubled past; and Stanford White, the charismatic architect, whose brilliance was overshadowed by his moral failings. The trial became a window into the cultural and ethical reality of an era defined by its extremes. Harry Kendall Thaw was a wealthy heir to a Pittsburgh fortune amassed through the coal and railroad industries. Born in 1871, Thaw's life was marked by indulgence, eccentricity, and erratic behavior. As the son of William Thaw Sr., a prominent industrialist, Harry grew up in an environment of immense privilege, but also familial dysfunction. His mother, Mary Thaw, was a domineering figure who wielded significant influence over his life and finances. Harry's erratic behavior, which included bouts of paranoia and violent outbursts, was often overlooked or excused due to his wealth and social status. By the early 1900s, Thaw had established a reputation as a playboy with a penchant for excess and a volatile temper. He traveled extensively in Europe, where his extravagant spending and scandalous antics drew attention. Despite his wealth, Thaw often felt overshadowed by members of New York's social elite, particularly Stanford White, a renowned architect and influential figure in high society. White's charisma and cultural contributions earned him admiration, but his personal life was mired in controversy, particularly regarding his relationships with young women. In 1905, Thaw married Evelyn Nesbit, a celebrated chorus girl and artist's model, who had achieved fame as one of the first it girls of her era. Evelyn's beauty and charm captivated society, but her past was shadowed by her relationship with Stanford White. White, a charismatic and powerful man, had become infatuated with Evelyn when she was a teenager. He provided her with opportunities to advance her career, but also took advantage of her youth and naivety. Evelyn later revealed that White had sexually assaulted her in his apartment, a traumatic event that would become central to the trial's narrative. Her revelations about the incident, along with Thaw's obsessive hatred of White, formed the crux of the case that would later unfold. On the evening of June 25, 1906, during a performance on the Rooftop Theater of Madison Square Garden, Thaw approached Stanford White and shot him 3 times at close range. The incident occurred in front of a large audience attending the premiere of the musical Mam'selle Champagne. Thaw, dressed in a black coat and white tie, calmly walked up to White's table, where the architect was seated with friends, and fired the fatal shots. White collapsed and died instantly, his body slumping over the table. The Rooftop Theater, designed by White himself, became the site of his dramatic demise. Thaw brandished the revolver and allegedly shouted, "He ruined my wife!" before being subdued by bystanders. The audience, initially thinking the gunshots were part of the performance, quickly realized the gravity of the situation, and panic ensued. The murder was a premeditated act of vengeance. Thaw had long harbored a grudge against White, whom he viewed as a symbol of decadence and moral corruption. His obsession with White's relationship with Evelyn fueled his paranoia and sense of outrage. In the days leading up to the murder, Thaw had reportedly been fixated on confronting White, and his purchase of the revolver was seen as a deliberate step toward enacting his violent plan. Thaw's immediate arrest marked the beginning of a legal saga that would captivate the nation. The crime's public nature and the prominence of its key players, a millionaire heir, a celebrated architect, and a beautiful young woman, made it a perfect storm for media sensationalism. Newspapers across the country carried lurid accounts of the murder, with headlines emphasizing the dramatic and scandalous elements of the story. As early as the morning following the shooting, news coverage became both chaotic and single-minded, and ground forward with unrelenting momentum. Any person, place, or event, no matter how peripheral to the incident, was seized on by reporters and hyped as newsworthy copy. Facts were thin, but sensationalist reportage was plentiful in this, the heyday of yellow journalism. The hard-boiled news reporters were bolstered by a contingent of counterparts, christened the Sob Sisters, whose stock in trade was the human interest piece, heavy on sentimental tropes and melodrama, crafted to pull on the emotions and punch them up to fever pitch. The rampant interest in the White murder and its key players were both used by both the defense and prosecution to feed malleable reporters any scoops that would give their respective sides an advantage in the public forum. Thaw's mother, as was her custom, primed her own publicity machine through monetary payoffs, and the district attorney's office took on the services of a Pittsburgh public relations firm, McChesney and Carson, backing a print smear campaign aimed at discrediting Thaw and Nesbit. And the Pittsburgh newspapers displayed lurid headlines, a sample of which blared, "Woman whose beauty spelled death and ruin." The trial, which began in 1907, became known as the Trial of the Century, due to its unprecedented media coverage and the dramatic elements involved. The main issue in the case was the question of premeditation. At the outset, the formidable district attorney, William Travers Jerome, preferred not to take the case to trial by having Thaw declared legally insane. This was to serve a twofold purpose. This approach would save time and money, and of equal if not greater consideration, it would avoid the unfavorable publicity that would no doubt be generated from disclosures made during testimony on the witness stand, revelations that threatened to discredit many of high social standing. Thaw's first defense attorney, Louis Delafield, concurred with the prosecutorial position, seeing that an insanity plea was the only way to avoid a death sentence for their client. Thaw dismissed Delafield, who he was convinced wanted to railroad him to Matewan Insane Asylum as the half-crazy tool of a dissolute woman. Thaw's mother was adamant that her son not be stigmatized by clinical insanity. She pressed for the defense to follow a compromise strategy, one of temporary insanity, or what in that era was referred to as a brainstorm. Acutely conscious of the insanity on her side of the family, and after years of protecting her son's hidden life, she feared her son's past would be dragged out into the open, ripe for public scrutiny. Protecting the Thaw family reputation had become nothing less than a vigilant crusade for Thaw's mother. She proceeded to hire a team of doctors, at a cost of $500,000, to substantiate that her son's act of murder constituted a single aberrant act. Possibly concocted by the yellow press in concert with Thaw's attorneys, the temporary insanity defense in Thaw's case was dramatized as a uniquely American phenomenon. Branded Dementia Americana, this catchphrase encompassed the male prerogative to revenge any woman whose sacred chastity had been violated. In essence, murder motivated by such a circumstance was the act of a man justifiably unbalanced. Finally, Thaw's defense team argued that he was a chivalrous husband driven to act by a sense of justice and outrage over White's abuse of Evelyn. Evelyn's testimony was central to this narrative. In court, she recounted her relationship with White in harrowing detail, describing the events that led to her assault and the lingering impact on her life. Her testimony painted a picture of Thaw as a man deeply affected by his wife's suffering. Evelyn's role in the trial was both pivotal and controversial. Her willingness to publicly recount the traumatic details of her past was seen by some as an act of bravery, while others questioned her motivations and the veracity of her claims. The defense portrayed her as a victim whose plight had driven her husband to commit an act of righteous vengeance. This framing resonated with segments of the public, particularly those who saw Thaw as a protector rather than a perpetrator. The prosecution, however, portrayed Thaw as a jealous and unhinged man who had long harbored a grudge against White. They highlighted Thaw's history of erratic and violent behavior, including instances of him abusing staff and displaying paranoia. The prosecution also argued that the murder was not an impulsive act, but a calculated decision, fueled by Thaw's obsession with White and his desire for revenge. Testimony from witnesses who had observed Thaw's confrontational behavior toward White prior to the murder bolstered their case. The media played a crucial role in shaping public perception of the trial. Newspapers sensationalized every detail, from Evelyn's beauty and tragic story to Thaw's erratic courtroom behavior. The trial became a spectacle, with spectators lining up for hours to secure a seat in the courtroom. Reporters competed to deliver the most salacious details, often blurring the line between fact and fiction. The public was divided, with some viewing Thaw as a protective husband avenging his wife's honor, while others saw him as a spoiled and unstable heir exploiting his privilege. The first trial ended in a hung jury, leading to a second trial in 1908. At the second trial, Thaw pleaded temporary insanity. This legal strategy was developed by Thaw's new chief defense counsel, Martin W. Littleton, whom Thaw and his mother had retained for $25,000, which is equivalent to $848,000 in 2023. Thaw was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sentenced to incarceration for life at the Mattawan State Hospital for the Criminally Insane in Fishkill, New York. His wealth allowed him to arrange accommodations for his comfort and be granted privileges not given to the general Mattawan population. Nesbit had testified at both trials. It was conjectured that the Thaws promised her a comfortable financial future if she provided testimony favorable to Thaw's case. It was a conditional agreement. If the outcome proved negative, she would receive nothing. The rumored amount of money the Thaws pledged for her cooperation ranged from $25,000 to $1 million. Throughout the prolonged court proceedings, Nesbit had received inconsistent financial support from the Thaws, made to her through their attorneys. After the close of the second trial, the Thaws virtually abandoned Nesbit, cutting off all funds. However, in an interview Nesbit's grandson Russell Thaw gave to the Los Angeles Times in 2005, it was his belief that Nesbit received $25,000 from the family after the end of the second trial. Nesbit and Thaw divorced in 1915. The case had long-lasting cultural implications. It exposed the dark underbelly of Gilded Age society, where wealth and influence often overshadowed morality and justice. It also highlighted the emerging power of the press in shaping public opinion. as newspapers competed to provide sensational coverage of the trial and its protagonists. The trial also served as an early example of the intersection of celebrity and legal proceedings. The intense public interest in the case foreshadowed the modern phenomenon of celebrity trials, where the personalities involved often overshadow the legal issues at hand. As for Evelyn Nesbit, the trial marked the beginning of a long struggle to reclaim her identity and independence. She continued to face public scrutiny and struggled with financial difficulties in the years that followed. Harry Thaw's release from the state hospital did little to restore his reputation. His subsequent legal troubles and continued erratic behavior reinforced the perception of him as a deeply troubled individual. Despite his family's wealth and influence, Thaw's actions left a legacy of scandal and infamy that overshadowed his privileged upbringing. The trial of Harry K. Thaw remains a landmark in American legal history, emblematic of its era's excesses and inequalities. It serves as a reminder of how personal vendettas, societal norms, and media sensationalism can converge to create a story that captivates a nation. For Thaw, the case was both a vindication and a stigma, leaving an indelible mark on his life and reputation. The broader cultural implications of the case continue to resonate. It highlighted issues of gender, power, and privilege that remain relevant in contemporary discussions of justice and accountability. The sensationalism surrounding the trial also underscored the enduring human fascination with scandal and the complexities of morality in public life. Ultimately, the story of Harry K. Thaw, Evelyn Nesbit, and Stanford White offers a window into the contradictions and tensions of a bygone era, while providing lessons that continue to resonate today. The trial challenged societal norms, forcing a reevaluation of power dynamics, the concept of honor, and the pervasive influence of media in shaping narratives. Even now, it serves as a case study in how the entanglements of wealth, celebrity, and justice can blur the lines of right and wrong. In the end, the trial was not just about guilt or innocence. It was a reflection of the human condition and the ever-present struggle for accountability in the face of power and privilege. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe for more.